Trump's tariffs just made Canada richer. In an unexpected twist, the tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump on Canadian goods have, counterintuitively, contributed to Canada's economic growth. While the intended purpose of the tariffs was to protect US industries, they have instead catalyzed a range of benefits for Canada, from bolstering domestic industries to fostering new trade relationships. This article explores how Canada has turned lemons into lemonade, using Trump's tariffs to its economic advantage. When Donald Trump announced his tariffs on steel, aluminum, and other Canadian exports in 2018, the move was met with widespread criticism and outrage. The tariffs, which ranged from 10% to 25%, were designed to protect US industries and reduce the trade deficit. However, they had the opposite effect on Canada, spurring innovation and economic diversification. When America sneezes, Canada catches a cold. Old economic adage turned on its head. Canada's initial response was to impose retaliatory tariffs on a variety of US goods, including ketchup, yogurt, and whiskey. These tariffs were intended to pressure the US into negotiating, but they also had the unintended consequence of encouraging Canadian consumers to seek out domestic alternatives. Key Canadian exports were affected differently. Steel faced 25% tariffs but boosted domestic production. Aluminum at 10% increased industry investment. One of the most significant outcomes of Trump's tariffs was the acceleration of Canada's economic diversification. With the US market less accessible, Canadian businesses were forced to look for new opportunities. The tariffs on steel and aluminum spurred significant investment in Canada's domestic metal industries. Companies like Stelco and Canadian Pacific Railway increased production to meet growing domestic demand. Canadian dairy farmers and producers saw a surge in demand as retaliatory tariffs made US dairy imports more expensive. This led to expansion of dairy cooperatives and increased sector investment. Canadian lumber producers, faced with higher costs in the US market, redirected their focus to domestic construction projects, which were booming due to a housing shortage. Canada's pivot away from the US market led to forging new trade alliances and partnerships. The government actively pursued trade agreements with countries in Asia, Europe, and Latin America. Canada's participation in the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership opened new markets for Canadian goods in countries like Japan, Australia, and Vietnam. The Canada-European Union Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement facilitated increased trade with European countries, providing Canadian businesses with new opportunities to expand their reach. Despite initial tensions, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement replaced NAFTA and provided a more balanced trade framework, ensuring long-term stability and growth. The tariffs strengthened the Canadian economy by fostering a more self-sufficient and resilient industrial base. This resilience was evident during COVID-19, when Canada was better equipped to handle supply chain disruptions. The tariffs served as a catalyst for increased investment in technology and innovation. Canadian companies, particularly in steel and aluminum sectors, invested heavily in automation and new technologies. Adversity introduces a man to himself, Albert Einstein. Despite initial concerns about job losses, the tariffs actually led to job creation and economic stability in Canada. The shift towards domestic production created new employment opportunities across various sectors. The Canadian government played a crucial role in supporting affected industries through subsidies and financial assistance, ensuring the transition was as smooth as possible. The tariffs had a profound impact on consumer behavior, with Canadians increasingly opting for domestic products over imported ones. This shift supported Canadian businesses and fostered national pride. Various Buy Canadian campaigns were launched to encourage purchase of Canadian-made products. These campaigns were highly successful, leading to increased sales for domestic businesses. The tariffs on imported skincare products led to a surge in demand for Canadian-made cosmetics and personal care items. Companies like Lush experienced significant growth during this period. Canadian consumers increasingly turned to locally produced food and beverages, supporting local farmers and producers. This boosted the agricultural sector and promoted sustainable consumption practices. the tariffs had broader societal implications beyond the economy. They sparked a national conversation about self-sufficiency, sustainability, and the need for a more resilient economy. Canadian businesses and consumers became more conscious of environmental impact. This led to increased demand for eco-friendly products and sustainable practices. The focus on domestic production helped revitalize local economies, particularly in rural and small-town Canada. This revitalization had positive impacts on community development and social cohesion. While Donald Trump's tariffs were initially seen as a threat to Canada's economic stability, they have ultimately made the country richer and more resilient. By fostering economic diversification, bolstering domestic industries, and promoting sustainable practices, Canada has turned a potential crisis into an opportunity for growth. The lessons learned from this experience have positioned Canada for long-term success in an increasingly uncertain global economy. As Canada continues to navigate the complexities of international trade, the country's ability to adapt and innovate will be key to sustaining this growth. The tariffs served as a wake-up call, highlighting the importance of a diversified economy and robust trade relationships. With a focus on innovation, sustainability, and resilience, Canada is well positioned to thrive in the face of future economic challenges.